Good afternoon. It's the first Sunday in the month of March 2025, and today I will be reading from chapter 25 of the book of Matthew, three verses 35, 37, and 40. But I encourage you to read the entire chapter. Verse 35, for I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. Verse 37, then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? Verse 40, and the king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. And that was from Matthew chapter 25 in the New King James Version. Today, I'm calling this segment the Trashman. Back in 1995, my sister and my brother-in-law, Sylvia and Bill, called me from New York and asked if I could possibly come to New York and relieve them of their duty of taking care of my mother and father. They had been taking care of Mom and Pop for about 7 years steadily. When Bill retired from the military, they chose to move back to New York and be close to our aging parents so that they could be a help to them. Well, in 1995, they needed a break. And that's when they called me and asked if I could come from Ohio and help take care of my folks for about a week, maybe 10 days. Well, I had accumulated a little vacation time, so I said, after speaking with my wife and getting her permission, said, okay, I'll be there. So I donned my Montana Western hat and my boots and my jeans, and I got on the Greyhound bus from Dayton, Ohio to the Bronx, New York. And I stayed and helped my parents out for 9 days. I drove my father and mother around to the grocery store, helped them with the shopping, helped them tote their laundry from their place down to the laundry room where they lived at, helped them fold. I cleaned and the entire place, all 2-bedroom apartment of theirs. I just generally helped. We joked and we laughed like we hadn't in years. And when the time came for me to start preparing to leave to come back to Ohio, I drove Dad to the bank and we went grocery shopping one more time. And on the morning that I was preparing to leave, Bill and Sylvia had returned from their vacation, and Bill was downstairs waiting for me as I was hugging Mom and Pop. Dad reached into his pocket and he pulled out $80 and he gave it to me. And I told him no. I said, I really don't need this. I've got enough to travel on and to get back home. He said, that's okay. You take it. You'll find use for it. And so him refusing my refusal, I went on, I took the money and I put it in my pocket. Bill drove me down to Penn Station where the Greyhound buses left. And there was a restaurant type area in Penn Station. So since I had a couple hours before my bus was ready to load, I went over to the cafeteria type place and got me something to eat. Found an empty table and sat down. Well, I saw this lady get up. She was rather well dressed, and she started putting her food that she had not consumed into the trash. Then I saw this man, who was rather shabbily dressed, walk over to the trash bin where she had tossed her food, still some of it in the styrofoam packaging. He reached in and was pulling it out and started to put it into a nylon type shopping bag that he had. Well, the lady, she decided he shouldn't have this trash, this garbage. And she went over to him and started trying to snatch the food from him, her trash, and put it back in the trash. And to me, that just seemed a little ridiculous. Why would she be doing that? Well, for some reason, I was prompted to get up and go over and say, hey, to the guy, don't worry about that. You hungry? Come on, let's go on up here and get you something to eat. So he let go of the trash that the woman was trying to put in the garbage. And we started walking over, and he gave me his name. His name was John. And when we got up to the feeding line, and as we were going through, I told him, I said, you go ahead and you take whatever it is that you want. And the server started dishing out what John was requesting, but I noticed that what he was dishing out was not the same portions that he had given to me. So I said, hey, what's going on here? I said, you need to go ahead and give him what he's asking for. I'm paying for it. So he did. He went on and he gave John what it was that he was asking for. And so since I still had some time, and John was walking towards the exit, I said, hey, I notice you're wearing a wedding ring. Are you married? And he said, yeah, my wife and kids are waiting out in our car. I said, your wife and kids are waiting out in the car. Then it kind of dawned on me to ask him, are you living out of your car? And he said, yeah, we're both out of work right now. And that's the only place that we could find that we could afford. So we just move from place to place. I come down here on occasion and get what I can for us to eat. Well, then it kind of dawned on me. I said, you know what, John? I said, here. And I reached in my pocket and took the $80 that my dad had given me. And I gave it to John, the trash man. And I said, John, this isn't much, but it's what I have to give today. So John took it reluctantly. It was just about time for our bus to load. So we shook hands. I departed and came back to Ohio. But the lesson here is that God, like I said last week, makes provisions. I didn't need that $80 that my dad had given me, but John did. And now here's the rest of the story. Some years later, when my parents had passed, and I went back to New York to attend their funerals, my dad's funeral in particular, there was John driving a city bus. He noticed me before I noticed him. I wasn't even dressed the same, didn't have my Montana hat on. But John said, "Hey, Rod." And I looked up and he said, "Thank you." So you may run into a trash man one day. And like me, your Father, your Heavenly Father, will give you something to pass on. Don't hesitate, knowing that God does make provision.